Hello everybody, and welcome to Constantly In Flux. I am your host, Oswald, and on today's show I want to talk about the Norwegian band Röyksopp. Although originally formed in 1998 during the Bergen Wave, it wasn't until 2001 that the duo released their first album, Melody AM, to critical acclaim. For the most part an album of down-tempo and trip-hop singles, Melody AM found the majority of its success here in the United Kingdom. That's not to say it didn't perform well elsewhere, reaching platinum status in both Norway and the Netherlands, as well as in the United Kingdom. It's safe to say that the album was a fantastic beginning to the band's career. My first experience of Röyksopp was actually through singles from this album, but I didn't realise it at the time I discovered the band properly many years later. Upon reaching this album while browsing the band's discography, I realised that a few of the tracks sounded oddly familiar to me. I later discovered that a couple of the tracks had been used in various advertising campaigns, likely the source of my familiarity with the music. Strangely, Apple, a track used as introduction music for the Mac OS X Panther setup assistant, was the one I seem to remember most, despite never having used an Apple computer, let alone one with that specific OS. To this day, I still don't know why, but such is life. During the following years after Melody AM's release, Röyksopp's popularity continued to grow in other markets, and in 2005 the band's second album, The Understanding, was released. On the whole, The Understanding failed to reach the same heights as its predecessor. Both album sales and critical reviews seemed to find the album lacking. Despite this seeming decline in quality, Röyksopp broke into the world of film with the track What Else Is There?, featuring in both the 2007 movie Meet Bill and the credits of 2006 Cashback. Additionally, a remix of the track by the Danish artist Triumphant featured in an episode of Entourage, an American TV show. Although I did not watch the show, it was the discovering of this remix which brought both Röyksopp and Triumphant to the forefront of my attention. Considering my love for each, this track would still be one I held in high regard, even if it were not an almost flawless example of how to do a remix. For, yes, as far as I'm concerned, this remix is basically flawless. I can't think of anything I would wish to change, given the chance. Contrary to how the album was received by others, I quite enjoy The Understanding. An obvious highlight for me was What Else Is There?, but 49%, Circuit Breaker, and Alpha Male are others that I would consider as standout tracks. After the release of The Understanding, there was once again a 4-year gap before the release of the band's next album, 2009's Junior. Whilst in terms of genre, Junior is a departure of sorts from the trip-hop tones of Melody AM, the techno-electronica beats of The Understanding, the album finds itself in an almost midpoint between the two, bringing together some of the brighter melodies of the former and the intricate driving tones of the latter. Röyksopp's entrance to the world of electronic pop was a fantastic showcase of the band's talents. Once again reaching into multimedia, Junior followed in the footsteps of its predecessor with the inclusion of singles in video games. It's what I want in FIFA 10's soundtrack, and a version of Vision 1 in Little Big Planet. On TV, Röyksopp Forever was used by both Channel 5 and The X Factor, and in movies, This Must Be It as part of 2011's Hall Pass. However, the most successful song of the album, as well as my personal favourite, goes instead to The Girl and the Robot. Not only did this song spawn one of my favourite quotes from a review, calling it a demented choral electronic masterpiece, it also debuted the vocal talent of Robin on a Röyksopp track, a collaboration that would spawn a wonderful EP down the line, but we'll talk about that later. Despite the seeming beginning of a trend of 4-year gaps between albums, it only took a single year until the follow-up to Junior was released. Styled as a counterpoint to the vocal-focused spring feel of Junior, Senior was the introspective, withdrawn, atmospheric autumn mood. The only album to consist of solely instrumental tracks, Senior marked a return to the down-tempo and trip-hop feel of Melody AM, albeit with a much darker tone. By far the most critically condemned album of the band's discography, its performance outside of Norway was poor, with many considering it to be a B-side collection, masquerading as a bona fide studio album, unable to capture and maintain the attention of the listener. For the most part, I unfortunately agree. Whilst Tricky 2, a reimagining of Tricky Tricky from Junior, Alcoholic, and The Drug are, as far as I'm concerned, wonderful to listen to, the rest of the album fails to capture the magic of Röyksopp's earliest work. It's quite telling that, unlike any other album released by the duo, no single of Senior was featured as part of any video game, TV, movie, or ad campaign. Although I don't see the album as a failure by any means, there's certainly a high level of mediocrity that's unbefitting of a band who had achieved so many high points in their career. It was relieving, then, that despite returning to the 4-year gap between releases, Röyksopp once again managed to return to its former greatness with Do It Again, their collaborative EP with Robin. When it comes to the potential of a collaboration between Röyksopp and Robin, I consider this EP to be an almost idealized representation, a sentiment that I know is shared amongst many. From the grand and yet somehow almost minimal 10-minute long intro and outro tracks, Monument and Inside the Idle Hour Club, with the complex and bass-driven techno of Say It, and the stylistic mix of both that forms the band's iconic electropop sound in Do It Again and Every Little Thing, not a single track is wasted. To be able to fit so much in only 5 songs is impressive, even if you take into account the average song length of a little over 7 minutes, the longest of any of their releases. As a fan of the techno and electronic elements of Röyksopp more than the pop elements, Say It represents some of the best the band has to offer. The powerful driving bass line, the production is top-notch, missing not a single beat. One additional topic I would like to touch on, specifically for this EP, is the album art. For the most part, Röyksopp's album art is fine. Not really much happens in any of it, but it does the job. And then there's this. I don't really know what's happening here, nor do I really think I want to know. But either way, I can be sure still that I adore the peculiar vibes represented here. Do It Again was not the last you would hear from Röyksopp in 2014, however, as only 6 months later, they went on to release their next and final album. Suitably named The Inevitable End, Röyksopp's final album represents the epitome of their work. Before the release of the album, the band had described it as exploring darker subject matter with emphasis on the local content, a claim clearly substantiated upon first listen. The album starts off with quite possibly the darkest track of the whole discography, Skulls, with its deep, pounding kick drum and gritty analog bassline, a powerful undercurrent to the menacing vocoded vocals. A strong opener, if ever I heard one. Progressing on to an almost equally dark reimagining of Monument, originally from the Do It Again EP, shows the beginning of the focus on lyrical content to the return of Robin. Yet Robin is only one of the 4 talented vocalists featured on the album, being joined by Suzanne Sundfør, Jamie Irrepressible, and Ryan James of Man Without Country. Though the entire album is full of phenomenal tracks, undeniable that Running to the Sea is by far the highlight, with its gentle piano melody, powerful vocals and driving beat. Everything is pulled together into an instant classic. This is not only the best of Röyksopp, but quite possibly of Sundfør too. There's no better way to end an era. However, though The Inevitable End was to be the last of the band's albums, it was not the end of the band itself. Introducing The Lost Tapes. Maintaining the roughly 4-year gap between releases, the start of 2019 also saw the start of The Lost Tapes, a series of B-sides, exclusives, and otherwise unreleased tracks. At the time of recording, The Lost Tapes currently contains 15 tracks, with hopefully more being released in the future. Were The Lost Tapes combined into an album, it's likely I would consider it one of their best. A fair number of the eclectic series of singles rank among my favourite Röyksopp tracks, with some particular highlights being Church, Andromeda, and Gentle Movements. Though they've met varying levels of success throughout their career, Röyksopp are one of my favourite bands. Their electronic and techno work suits my palette perfectly, and their collaborations with various vocalists have resulted in some of the best electropop out there. While it is a shame there are no more albums to come, the lost tapes have continued to provide some fantastic music, and no doubt there will be some excellent future singles to come. For anyone interested in listening further to the music of Röyksopp, I have put together a playlist below containing some of my favourite tracks, organised in a way that I find pleasing. Additionally, a list of all the tracks I've used throughout this video will be in the description, alongside a link to the script. You have been listening to Constantly In Flux. I hope you've enjoyed today's show, and I will see you next time.